Good morning. I'm Richard Tate, the president here at Alleghany Lancaster Community College. And it's indeed my pleasure to welcome you to our campus and to this economic summit. If this is the first time that you've been in this room or this building, I hope that you'll take some time after the summit to kind of wander around and see what a great facility we have here. You might also take some time to make the short walk across campus and see our newly renovated library facility as well. We're very pleased with these. We think it really improves the services for our students. We at the college are also pleased to be a co-host of this event. When Mary Donnan talked to me, I said we will do whatever it takes to make this successful. We here at the college take very seriously our role of supporting our community and our service area and our sponsors, which you may know are Bannock County, Alleghany County, Botetourt County, Rockbridge County, the cities of Covington, Una Vista, and Lexington. I want to thank each of you for being here and taking the time out of your busy schedule. Mary's got this down to the minute, how we're going to operate. We're trying to get you in and out of here on time. Also, a big thanks to the Alleghany Foundation, the Chamber, and the EDC for also supporting this event. I've met with John Rhodes, our facilitator, several times now. And in my 44 years in education, I've met a lot of consultants. And John is one of the very best. So we're, I think, very pleased and glad that we have him to work with us. I also want to thank John. He's taken a lot of time to meet with many of us. He's done a lot of research on the area to help him with this particular project. And our purpose today is to first hear about his work and then to hear from our community leaders, each of you, and talk about ways of increasing economic activity in the Alleghany Highlands. At this point, Teresa Hammond will introduce our facilitator.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Good morning and greetings from the Alleghany Highlands Chamber of Commerce and Tourism. We appreciate your attendance here today, and we value your input throughout the day and during our sessions. This past fall, our community hosted a business summit. A lot of you all attended, and we appreciate you being there for that. And at that time, we celebrated the successes and also the investment that a lot of our businesses are making here in the Alleghany Highlands. We heard about the significant investment that the Homestead's making with their new amenities and upgrades there, the biomass boiler project at Mead Westvaco, Ballcam's new manufacturing facility. We also learned about the new services being provided at Lewis Gale Alleghany, and of course the renovations here on campus, including this lovely facility and the new renovated library. So we had some great successes to talk about, and now we have the opportunity to talk about what we have in our future, what we have to look forward to. What will be our next steps for community and economic development, and where do we go from here? Today, John Rhodes will be here to help lead and facilitate those discussions, and we appreciate his support. Mr. Rhodes has led the MS&B consulting practice since 1994, focusing on site selection in both corporate and nonprofit organizations, community economic development consulting. Mr. Rhodes has leveraged more than 35 years of work experience and background in civil engineering, marketing, and corporate relocation to successfully position companies to identify optimum locations and also for communities to grow their economies. He has helped a long list of clients that have valued his service and his advice and innovative approaches. It's my pleasure to introduce John Rhodes.
It's certainly a privilege to be here. Can you all hear me all right? Very good. I have a little bit less time than I thought, so we'll go through this fairly quick. We're going to do three key things today. We're going to look at some basic economic development 101. We're going to take a couple of different approaches that maybe you've seen before or read in the paper or books. We're then going to look at a little bit of how one might perceive the Alleghany Highlands from the outside looking in. And then we're going to look a little bit about economic opportunities here, but then we're going to go next door and really dig into it. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. If you have a burning question, just ask it. We can wait till the end and have a few Q&As, but if you have a burning question, go ahead. You don't interrupt my train of thought. So Economic 101, that is a community. Better know it looks like a beehive, but it's a community. In the center of that community are the resources that allow a community to thrive. It's its land, its labor, access to capital, it's its training, it's its utilities, all those things that allow businesses to thrive. Those businesses that we call level one are those that bring cash into a community, and they are a very variety of businesses. Everything from a state or federal government agency that employs people or engages in programs in your community, like a national forest, agriculture, manufacturing, tourism, business services that have outside clients, and then regional healthcare and regional retail, all are important parts of an economy. The level two are business support services. That's the multiplier effect. Because those businesses are here, like we have a large paper mill here, so we have other businesses that serve the paper mill. If the paper mill disappeared, those services would disappear. So there's a leveraging factor going in and a leveraging factor going out. And then the third level are what we call consumer services, which are those businesses that provide services to you as consumers. They're really important services. Now you'll also find there's crossovers. There can be businesses that provide consumer services like a restaurant, which also serves tourism. So this is not a pure, clean cut. You have to realize, though, that some businesses build up the economy and grow with the economy. These grow with the amount of people that are in the economy. These grow with the types of businesses that are here. And these grow when you have the resources, the labor, and all that in order to grow. The net result of all this is we want to provide quality and variety of jobs. We want to have a tax base that provides taxes from a company that exceeds the cost of the services to that company. Obviously, you want a net positive on taxes. You want resources that they need to match the resources that you offer, because if you don't, they won't come or they won't thrive. And lastly, you want to have a strategic reason for having a company come. And that may be because if one company comes of a certain type, other companies will come. That's why sort of nationally they want to go after those big car makers. Because if you get a car maker, maybe you get a component maker in your community. And we can do that on a different scale here. When you look at all the different resources, I'm not going to bore you with all the details on every slide. This is really kind of an overview, and you can read faster than I can talk. But the bottom line is these are all the components that are required in order to be successful in attracting and maintaining businesses. Obviously, the size, the scale, and the type will change by the local economy. When you look at how economies come together, in the core of every economy are market needs that are fulfilled. And they could be anything from education to energy to transportation. These are all the things we as people and as businesses need. Therefore, we're willing to pay for. But the world has another different story, and that is they impact what happens with these. Like, for example, the cost of energy changes how we do transportation. Or world terrorism changes what we do with defense and security. Or the changes in demographic changes what we do for healthcare. Because as a population gets much older, their need and demand for healthcare changes. And so if you have an older community, they have different types of services than if you have a very young community. Now, out of this needs come opportunities. And the opportunities come in the form of a service or a product or the commerce of that, which is the distribution, the wholesaling, the transportation thereof. And then tourism sits by itself as another entity. The location that you offer and the resources that you offer allow you to compete for those services that are needed to fulfill that economy in the world that we live in. It's really a 5-dimensional model, and I tried to do it in 2 dimensions. Another key point, and this is a very important point for this community, as any other community, is that businesses start, businesses grow, businesses consolidate, products become competitive, technology usurps somebody else's technology, and then businesses shrink. That happens when you're making steel, it happens when you're a railroad, it happens when you're making paper, it happens in every product line. The resources that are required during that process will change over time. So you may be a community that provided a perfect package for a company when it was a younger company, yet when it was acquired by another company, they said, well, I don't want to keep it here, I want to move it to someplace else. That isn't particularly your fault, that's just the way the chips fall. When you look at how people do site selection, and this is a really quick overview on what site selection is all about, but when a company is deciding that they want to expand or either relocate a business or expand a business, First, they look at the business case. Then they look at the risk versus cost of doing something. And if the risk and cost are less than the opportunity, they perceive if it's a certain ratio. Then they get into the screening process of deciding where they want to go. A lot of people say they want to be in a right-to-work state, and that's why a lot of the southern states have been quite successful. Yes, Virginia is a right-to-work state. Geographic positioning matters because logistics cost, and as the cost of energy goes up, we really worry about logistics. Industry presence, the skills that are there, get leveraged into the next business. If I want to bring a certain business here, let's say it has something to do with microbiology, I want to know that there's a microbiologist here that I can hire. Transportation access, and transportation access changes over time. There was a time in history where rail was king, where everybody needed to be on a rail line. And then there was a time when almost nobody needed to be on a rail line, and now we're seeing that people want to go back to a rail line for some businesses. The game changes. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get to your community. And then there are many other resources that they worry about, as we talked about on previous slides. When you look at economic development, and I think you've done a pretty good job at this, but the idea is to have a vision and a strategy and a plan, which you have. You have a coordinated team, which you have. You have strategic location, which essentially you have. And then you have a competitive resource package. We're going to talk a little bit about that, what areas we think you're competitive or not. When you look at types of operations, you have to realize that different types of operations, as in numbers of jobs per acre, or as in the level of compensation per job, or as in the tax revenue that you create, do change or are modified by the type of operation. Obviously, if you had a relatively small packed-in building where you had all these very high-level paying people using lots of expensive equipment, you can get your most money out of them per square foot. We don't necessarily live in a community where we're going to put big office parks. So we may go to a little bit of an office park, but we certainly want to have some opportunities for manufacturing. Those kind of jobs vary a little bit, depending upon what kind of operation, whether it's a high-tech operation or a low-tech operation. Warehousing requires a lot more space per acre. A retail complex also requires space, but it's also part of quality of life. It's also part of tourism, so we don't ignore it. We need it, but we have to be careful how much space we consume when we're doing retail. When you look at jobs and the return that you get, and then a data center, very low on jobs, very low on space, but you can get some really good revenues out of it. And I know you've been trying to get some type of a data center in the area. When you look at economic development as a strategy, and then you look at resources that you need, we're going to take one resource, and that's just the real estate piece, okay, in this case. In this case, whether it's a building or a piece of land or whatever, there are 4 levels of analysis that somebody does around a piece of real estate. And those 4 levels are, at the building level, the size, the shape, the quality, the age of the building matters. A really old building that's really short and really chopped up is very the demand for that is a whole lot less for some businesses. I mean, some small businesses, fine, it can be repurposed. Older buildings are concerned because they may not meet code, therefore you worry about that. As you move from building into the site and the dirt around it, then you worry about whether the site has limestone deposits on it. They're going to crush when you go to put a building on it. You know, how stable is the building? Where's the floodplain? All the quality of the soil, all those kind of things are around the building. And then you go to local access and services, like, for example, if I want to have a facility here, I want to have a hospital within a certain distance in case somebody gets hurt. I want to have a restaurant. I want to have a hotel or some kind of a place for my guests to stay when they come visit my facility. So they worry about that. And then the outer ring is really kind of the airport and the outer ring of the commute zone of the people, labor. And I worry about all those levels. So when Dave is talking to a client, he has to satisfy a company at all 4 of those levels. So you can see his job can become rather complex, trying to understand what a particular company is going to need at all 4 of those levels. Now we're going to look a little bit about the Alleghany Highlands. The first thing typically we look at is population and population trends. So in order to speak a common language, I had to untie what happened because as Clifton Forge became part of the county in 2000, and that data and this, that, and the other. And then Covington acquired land from the county at a certain point in history. I had to be able to explain how these numbers work. Well, this is the minutia of what's going on in the different entities, but the top line is the whole ball of wax. So the Alleghany Highlands, and all the way from 1910, which was about 20,000 people, went all the way up to closer to 30,000 people, and it worked itself down, and now it's been on a 30-year swing of going south. It decelerated 20 years ago, but it's starting to decelerate, but it's still slowing down. This is a really hard chart to understand, so I tried to make it simple. The idea is the gray bars are 2000 and the black bars are 2010. So let's just look at the bars for a minute. But the bottom line on this chart is these are the federal numbers, and I used to have 4 bars and you couldn't read it, you turned dizzy on me, so I put the little couplets in here. But the first thing you look at is what's the trend in different age groups, or what we call cohorts or age ranges, from the in a 10-year period. Is it going up or is it going down? You'll notice under 30 or under 40 years old, this is Covington, by the way, they've been shrinking except for in the 10 to 19-year-olds, they went up drastically. The explanation for that might be a whole bunch of kids came to live with their grandparents, or somebody brought a whole bunch of 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-olds into this community because their birth rate is down. But during the recession, they may have acquired a bunch of kids. So there's an anomaly here. But the bottom line is that under 30, 39 and below, that part of the community is starting to lose ground on the younger ones and gain ground on the upper ones. Now, if you look at the county at large, you can see that we definitely have a serious trend of the younger people being less here than the older people. And how that trend manifests itself is if you look at it from the 19-year-olds and below, you'll notice that the Alleghany County, which is the blue numbers, have significant drops in the 10 to 19-year-old and then very significant drop here. And you'll notice in the Covington area, they had 2 growth areas in the 10 to 19-year-old, and that's why I mean, people aren't born at the age of 10, so they have to show up somewhere. And then they have a drop in birth rates also. So that all manifests itself into school district, and I didn't mean I'm closer to the door than you are. I'm not going to get into the school district thing. The only thing that I'm showing you from the outside looking in is the Alleghany County School District's losing 400 students overnight almost. And there's the problem. You're losing students pretty fast. And so how do you deal with it? And I know you're dealing with it, but I didn't want to deal with it today. Okay, the next thing after demographics in terms of population growth by overall and then as well as different segments, we also look at income level. Now, in some cases, you look at income level because you hope the income levels aren't too high because you want to pay a reasonable price for your job. So if I look at Fairfax County, Fairfax County, all the numbers are shooting way up here and there's nobody down here. But we're a small rural area, and our cost of living here is, on a national scale, is about an 88 or an 83. In other words, an average community in the United States has 100. The cost of living in D.C. is probably about 200 and some. The cost of living here is about 83. The cost of housing here, on a national level, where the average home cost in the country is 100, we're at 64 here. So housing is an incredible bargain here. And that pulls your numbers down so that people, to some degree, on the housing level, you could have a significant number of people making less than $25,000, and right here in Clifton Forge you do. You have quite a few families that are making less than $25,000. In Covington, you have a little middle class, service class of fairly high, making 25 to 50. Then you can see we're getting sort of close to national and state averages in the 50 to 75. You'll notice that Clifton Forge is dropping here. There is still a little bit of a chunk in some of these higher levels here in Clifton Forge, and you'll see that there's not that many people there in Covington, but Covington also is a pretty strong in the 75 to 100. So you have a little different in wage or income, family median income differences between some of the communities. But as you can see, with Clifton Forge having that, there's only so many things that you can do reflecting what is that population, what are their skill levels, and what kind of jobs can we go for them. Because we have to be aware of that, because it's a large portion of the population. All right, a little bit out of the local, a little bit into the, so where are we? One thing you have to consider, if you're looking for a single East Coast location, there is no better place in this country than to go into Virginia. That's the good news. The bad news is, what if you're looking for 2 East Coast locations? That puts you in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. So when you look, when Dave looks at data, you look at what companies have done over and over and over again. If they're looking for a single location, they'll look somewhere between northern North Carolina and Maryland, in other words, Virginia, if they're looking for a single location. And of course, they do a lot of work along the 81 corridor and a lot on the 95 corridor. So you're in the hunt as far as an opportunity. When you look at how the demographics come out, and how you do GIS and how you do all kinds of computer-generated graphics and information, one of the things that you do is you ask the computer, highlight a county that has a population within a certain threshold and above that is contiguous with an interstate. So all those things will flash on. Now, I didn't bother to flash on all within that criteria because you can visually see. But you'll notice here that within the greater Roanoke area, I would be considering of that area. When you look at the Richmond area, I would be very considering of that area. The DC area, just conceptually, yes, but then you look at cost and you go, no, it's way too expensive. And then you look up the 81 Shenandoah Valley, yes. You also look down in Bristol, and then you look down in the Pulaski's and Montgomery counties, possible. When you then look at elevations, and not everybody does this, but people like me do, you're looking for flat, cheap land. Lots of flat, cheap land. And land that has a high level of readiness, which means they've done all the tests. It's a little bit like, bad example, but you're going to marry somebody. And the guy goes, I think I can get a piece of land and maybe we can build a house someday. And you go, well, that sounds okay. All the way to the other end of the continuum is, I own a mansion it's ready to move into. Which guy would you rather marry? All other things considered, of course. The bottom line is, when you're a company looking for a location, do you want to move into a building? Or do you want to go and try to dicker with a local farmer and then find out that there's karst under the land and I can't build on the land and it's going to be a 3-year delay? So what you do is you either buy a building or lease a building, or you acquire a piece of land that is, quote, certified. In other words, they've been through all the tests. But you will notice that I didn't highlight any of this area because the perception is there's not very much flat land in this area. But the state will give you a good shot, because VEDP will say, I'll give you a shot because I know what you have, even if the outside world doesn't perceive. So you can pass that test, but just from a generic test, as you can see, you wouldn't get included with it when you pass the flat land test. No surprises, right? Now we're going to go right into the county itself. This is, where would I put a business in this county if I considered the interstate the most important thing? So I look at population, and I look at the interstate, and I look at interchanges, and then I start looking at where the population centers are. Well, they're pretty obvious, because where the population centers are, I'm assuming I can get utilities. So I need flat land that's relatively available, or I need a building, and I need to be near people that want to work, and I need to be near utilities, and I need to be at where it's not that costly. So you have to start adding all those pieces together. And then you go, so where are the land and the facilities here? And you start highlighting them out. Now, the two that are really kind of interesting are the former Parker Hannafin facility in Iron Gate, and then the former Hercules facility. Both of those were built before the interstates came. So they're very rail focused. And of course, they were also built to have people live around them. So now, if you want to do serious trucking, like if this land actually was ever available, let's say we knocked the building down, or let's say somebody liked the building, you have to literally drive through the little back roads of Iron Gate to get a truck into that facility, even though it's right on the rail line. So what worked very well a generation ago, for the next generation, the contemporary generation, then they go, well, that facility isn't exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for like a greenfield site. that's pretty, and it's ready to go, and it's all this. Well, that's not true for everyone. Some people are looking for a building, but that's why, folks like Dave, kind of pull his hair out going, I need to find something that works for these people. You'll notice that the last company that came here, the one that we're so proud of, that just opened up in our industrial park, notice how they came because there was a building there? I'm not saying you got to go build a building. I'm just saying is that company of that size made that decision. Now, let's look at kind of a quick and dirty strengths and weaknesses for the area. Strengths: interstate access. Some sites have rail access. Reasonable strategic location. We've already defended that case. Labor resources from industry presence. You have a lot of industry here. And you have this college here, and you have some really good programs in this college to support industry. You've got a good community college with industry focus. You've got great health care. You've got substantial water resources. You have competitive power costs. And there are some sites available. That's the positive side of the assets. Very limited flat land, so you don't have an unlimited amount of flat land. We all know that. Very limited buildings that are in good condition, that are at a certain age and meet all the criteria that people want. Like I said, the Hercules building and the old building in Iron Gate are a little concerned because they're so old. What kind of code issues are we going to have when we go to build it? You have a declining demographics. People are worried about, if I put a plan in here and I want to be here for 10 years, what's the labor force going to look like in 10 years? Now, are you generating kids in this community that if there was a job, would they stay back and work there? Or is everybody on an exit out of here? People will ask you that question. Dave has the answer to those questions. Those can be tough questions sometimes. You do have natural gas. Yes?
You just lied.
Yep. You have natural gas, but you don't have natural gas in your industrial park. And now there's about 5 businesses out there, including the hospital, including the paper converting plant that's there, and several of the other plants that all wish they had natural gas. So you're getting quite a customer out there. So we're going to have to deal with that issue. And to be perfectly honest with you, some of the places in this area, you drive down the road, it looks tired. Plant managers and company owners will drive into a community and say, if these people, the way they handle their own business, came to my business, is this what my business would look like? What's the pride level of how people maintain their properties? With all due respect, that's one of the things that you have to deal with. Now, I realize some people like to store everything they own in the yard, and that's just perfectly fine with many cultures. But other cultures look at it as that you don't care because you should be hiding those things. And they go, well, what's my car? I'm proud of it. It's in the front yard. But it doesn't have any tires on it. Well, but I'm going to use it someday. But there's a conflict between what the modern perceived value of what a community looks like and what a community is. Now, I've been to this community 4 times now. And I start looking more on the positive and less on the negative. Now I'm being contaminated with what I like here. But the bottom line is the first impressions sometimes are good and sometimes aren't. Overall, though, it's a good, strong industrial community. A little discussion on economic development. Here is your history of your economy in one flash moment. You started off in agriculture, very long time ago. And then somewhere along the way we started an industry called flour milling or corn milling. We did all kinds of grain milling. Then we started into the iron business in the early 1800s. And this became the iron capital and the iron source, certainly of the country and then certainly of the Confederacy as we move forward. And then there are other, like limestone mining, that's still here. So we still have an arrow. We still have an arrow. We have at least one major dairy farm here, and we have some other, but a lot of these things have gone away. But we still have some semblance of agriculture. We still have some mining operations. We used to do lemon tanning. We don't do that anymore. We used to have the C&O big shops that are here. That stopped. But they created a hospital, and that went through several generations, and now we have world-class health care here. So we still got an arrow here, we got an arrow there. Then we went into silk and rayon, and that went for quite a long time, and that has ended. We did wood products. We did a variety of wood products. We used to make all the supports and stanchions and all that for the telecommunications industry when it was telephone poles. Now we're into other wood products. And we had this incredible paper mill that's here, one of the largest in the world. It's here, it's growing, it's still here, it's going to be here for a while. It's our anchor. That is your economy. What I see from that is You've been vital, you've been busy, you've been a center of activity for your entire life, from 1750 till now, and you still are. You have every bit to be proud of. Go back to life cycle. Leather tanning. You got a little bit of competition from a few other states, and eventually that died off. Iron mining. I'm working in Duluth, Minnesota, next to the Iron Range in Minnesota. That's where your iron industry went. They're about to lose their iron industry if they don't change their game, because right now all the taconite that's coming out of there is going into the basic oxygen furnaces, and now all the furnaces are going to electric arc, and they're about to lose that as a source. They have to change. My only point is, businesses came, businesses grew, businesses matured, and businesses left, and it had nothing to do with you. You weren't bad. You didn't drive them away. You didn't make them go. The world, the economy, changes came. C&O consolidated. They built bigger yards and bigger locations where they had more land, like in Cincinnati. And you cycled out, but it wasn't your fault. What is your fault is, what are we going to do now? We have resources, we have assets. We've always had something going, and we do now. But what we have now won't be here in the future. And what the kids are going to want to work at, and the products that people are going to want, may not match what we have today. The only thing that I say to you is, if the reason a business, a reason a community exists, no longer exists, do they have the right to exist if they don't make the transition to another economy? And so that's what today is all about. You have very successful businesses here in a number of areas. You're still vital, but you're shaky. You are starting to go down in population. If you go too far, you will lose that hospital. If you go too far, you'll lose more schools. But you don't have to. We need to get creative. This is a really cool place. We need to grow from here on up. This college, that hospital, that paper mill, the wood companies that we have here, the other small companies we have here are the beginning of the future. And then what's going on in Clifton Forge in terms of the arts, the attracting of new companies and people to come here. That city hasn't reached that town hasn't reached a tipping point yet. But when that thing reaches a tipping point, you're going to see some serious activity happening there. And you can see that the folks that are there are pushing that up to that tipping point. When that hits, good luck. You all better buy property about 2 years before that tipping point comes, because that'll be the investment of a lifetime when people start coming. Because what's happening, and I was in the Red Lantern this morning, and I was spending an hour showing this presentation to a couple from DC who want to move here. They think this is a cool community. She's a PhD in microbiology. He's had 3 or 4 careers. They have a daughter who wants to do stuff in arts. They want to be in a small community that's safe and fun. They want to own a little land. They want to live in a town. And I'm starting to show them what's here. And I said, we're not at a tipping point yet, but man, when it gets, you better be there. And I think the more you attract people from the bigger cities to come down here and see this community, the more you're going to see people go, you know what, this isn't so bad. Now, some people have more vision than others. And they'll be the early ones. And then there'll be the middle range, and then there'll be the ones that are there, like the ones that are moving to Lewisburg now after everything has all happened. Now, I'm not saying we're going to turn this place into Lewisburg. We're going to turn this place into whatever we want to turn it into. So, bottom line is, this is your economy as it stands right now, and a portion of retail and hospitality is in tourism. You have very strong manufacturing, you have very strong health care, and the educational services really doesn't fit in here because a lot of the people that work here are considered government employees because it's a government facility, so I don't have the government number here. But you're strong in education, strong in health care, strong in manufacturing, a number of services here, and you got a reasonable chance for really good hospitality and tourism here. So here are your options. More manufacturing. What do we do with agriculture? Can we grow things up the side of a mountain? Can we grow, can we borrow some heat from the paper mill and make tomato hothouses here? I mean, what creativity can we go to? Professional, technical, and creative services can move anywhere there's an internet access. You can get some people coming in who want to start a small business here. You get the healthcare. Where's it going to go? If we continue to age, the healthcare will follow the age. What the healthcare industry needs here are people that have insurance that's not Medicare-based. Because Medicare could cripple a lot of communities because they're going to pay you less and less and less. So we need people that are card-carrying members of some insurance plan other than Medicare to come. Yes, we can add diet and retirement services, we can do some tourism, regional retail. That may come in a distant future. We can expand what we do at the college here. Plenty of room for entrepreneurship. There is room for a small call center or back office in a number of places in the community. So those are your options. I have to stop. I'm almost done. Real estate. Keep in mind, a small business tends to want a building. A larger, unique business tends to want land that's highly ready and ready to roll. And then these are all the services that they need. Last slide. This is a very important slide. There are some colleges in this country that offer a program called Mechatronics. It's the future. It teaches students how to do 6 different disciplines that relate to manufacturing, because as manufacturing becomes more automated, people can no longer be one skill oriented. They have to be multi-skill oriented. This college is one of those few choice elected universities, colleges that actually has this program, and they're working it every day and working it with the industrial community. So that's my last slide to say, this college is not your average community college. This college does things like in forestry and in manufacturing. They've got a great nursing program, and they're flexible and they're willing to do things. Phenomenal facilities. Your hospital is not your average hospital. So you have some tremendous assets here, things to be proud of and things to love.